Well, Sean, welcome to the Music Business Dreams podcast. I'm super excited to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here. I'm looking forward to chatting.
Same here. So, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, we had a very productive day of sessions and making some great music and trying to keep things moving in this crazy time.
Excellent.
Been good.
So, well, I've been looking forward to this conversation, doing some research, doing some homework, and reading up on you. And I'm really excited for the conversation today. But for those who may not be familiar, can you give us just a brief introduction to who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Well, I'm a Sonic Storyteller, and I own The Record Shop, which is a production company and recording studio based in Nashville, Tennessee. I spend most of my time working with artists on developing their artistic vision and turning that into a tangible recording or a piece of content. And our company supports in the creation of all of that. And we have a beautiful recording studio based here in Nashville that we do a lot of our work out of.
Nice. So you put that into the words Sonic Storyteller. Explain what that is and how you arrived at that term.
Well, it came out of a thought about how to articulately describe what I do when I'm in a situation where I'm meeting someone new, specifically in sort of like a networking situation or meeting someone new in the industry. And, the first thing somebody asks you is, so what do you do? And the most common answer for someone with my occupation is I produce records, or I'm an audio engineer and producer. And that's a clear way of describing what I do. But my approach is specific, and I'm a unique individual. Everyone is a unique individual. And I wanted to find a special way to explain what I do that would lead to a more purposeful discussion. So early on, when I would introduce myself, I would say that, and they'd be like, "Oh, cool." And then I would continue on with, I produce, I engineer, I mix, I do programming, I co-write with artists, and I have a studio, and you go kind of down this list, and people's eyes roll back in their head. And so I wanted to come up with a creative way to describe what it is that I do, and where that term stemmed from is my philosophy to production, and what really made me so passionate about music from a young age was the story that sounds could tell. And I had an experience when I was in elementary school where we had a music class, which was amazing for us to have that education when I was that young. And I had a specific memory of learning about orchestral instruments and how they could tell a story and create characters within a sonic piece that didn't have any dialogue within it. And I thought that was so interesting. And I started to listen to music in that way, commercial music in that way. And that really made me fall in love with this idea of creating sounds and telling stories through sound. And the secondary part of what I do as a producer is work with a lot of artists on telling their story beyond the record. So creating content in the production process, creating visual content that we do either in the studio or on location somewhere as a way to be able to provide an extra level of understanding of what it is that we're creating on the record itself, and to help them with promotional stuff. And so that the idea of being a sonic storyteller sort of encompasses everything that I do, and it leads to a more in-depth conversation usually when I describe myself that way, as opposed to saying, yeah, I'm a producer, I work in studios.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you've known that music is something you wanted to do from a really young age.
Yeah.
What got you interested and kind of set you on the path?
I think the first thing that got me interested was my father. He's a huge music fan, and I have all these memories of riding around in the car with him. He'd be taking me to hockey practice or driving me off at school, and I would, and he'd always have a different CD on. And the music was very eclectic, like across the board of genres, from like classic rock to hip hop to heavy metal to electronic music. And he was always just exploring, new sounds. He had all kinds of vinyl records and cassette tapes and CDs. And we'd always be listening to something new. And some of the stuff I loved, and some of the stuff I didn't understand yet as a young kid. But I listened to a lot of music. And he also dabbled in guitar a little bit, kind of just for fun. And that kind of made me interested to want to take guitar lessons. And he took me to concerts, and I loved the energy and the atmosphere of all these people gathering to listen to somebody perform their deepest, darkest, most intimate like stories and secrets and stuff. And I just thought the experience was so much fun. And that I think those were the initial things that really made me fall in love with the idea of creating music for a living.
Got you. Okay. And so how what age would you say you decided, okay, I want to be a record producer? And how did you rule out being a singer or a guitarist or something of that sort?
Well, I think it was a bit of a process. So the
Mm,
first thing was starting to take music lessons. So I took guitar lessons. My sister was taking piano lessons, and I would kind of play off of her little music sheets and stuff. And both of those were interesting, and I enjoyed it, but I wasn't like super great at it. And I'm a
mm,
perfectionist, and so I would put in all this work and practice, and I just would still be kind of struggling while my buddies are there, just like ripping solos and stuff. And so I got excited to I saw a DJ named DJ Scribble on MTV Spring Break when I was like in middle school,
mm,
and he was out on the ocean in this on this huge stage, lights and loud music. Everybody's partying, having a great time, and he's the center of the the party and spinning the records. And I just thought that was so cool. It looked awesome. I was like, that looks awesome. That'd like a fun thing to do. And I was really getting into hip hop around that age too, and just loved like the culture and the storytelling and the experiences behind it, and the combination of music with the graffiti and the breakdancing and just the whole triage of culture that comes together within hip hop. And I wanted to learn how to be a DJ, so I saved up some money one summer cutting lawns, and I got a couple turntables and a mixer and a few records and a course from Berklee College of Music and Turntablism, which
mm.
taught the art of turntablism from a music theory standpoint,
Oh,
which was super cool. And I was really good at that and was able to pick up on it, and I really enjoyed it. And what I found that I really loved about it was that I could listen to all these different kinds of songs and combine them together into different ways, as opposed to focusing on one individual instrument and playing one
mm,
part at a time. And I really got into just the whole combination of everything. And so at first it was falling in love with DJing. And then that led to wanting to record some of like the mixes that I was doing. And then I wanted to start creating my own music. So I got a 4-track cassette recorder and started to kind of learn the ins and outs of engineering a little bit, to record my own stuff and to record my friends, like their bands or singer songwriters that were friends of mine. And so that kind of progressed through high school. And when I was in high school, I needed to make a decision: am I going to go to college, and what sort of career am I going to go after? And I think that was really when it was like solidified that I'm going after this, and I'm going to figure out a way to make it happen. And that's where I got really excited about the idea of a career as a producer.
okay. So did you decide to go to school and try to make it happen that way, or what were your steps after high school?
Well, I think that my generation was one of the first where it was almost like a necessity to go to school.
Mm,
I graduated high school in 2004. The music industry was sort of around the bottom of the decline of everything that was happening after piracy and record sales going down. So I grew up in Detroit, and the economy there was tough as it is, and studios were just shutting down left and right. So in high school, I would call around and try to find like an internship or like a little, assistant job or something somewhere. And they were barely staying open, let alone like
mm,
helping people out or anything. And so the more the research that I did, all these recording schools started to pop up, and a lot of them had popped up out of failed recording studios, where they were starting to turn in this like a program into learning audio engineering and moving
mm.
away from the old school model of apprenticeship. And so
Gotcha.
while everyone that I had read about and all the like biographies that I'd read and documentaries that I had watched was, you find an internship or you find a job sweeping the floors at a studio, and you kind of learn the equipment on the after hours, and then eventually you start working on some custom sessions, and then you kind of work your way in, you climb the ladder over time. But that had seemed to really disappear by the time I was in a position to start my career.
Mm,
So that was what led me to the decision of going to a school. It was also a compromise with my parents to maybe not pursue a real job, that I would still get a degree. And so I found a school in Minneapolis that looked really cool, and decided to go there, and that was what led me to my education.
okay. And are you from Minnesota originally?
No, I'm from Detroit, Michigan.
Got you. Okay. So you travel to Minneapolis to go to recording school, and you just kind of learn the ropes from there. I mean, because I'm a Berkeley online dropout, and when people ask why I dropped out, it was like, okay, well, there was I started in 2013, early 2013, Aside from getting married in 2014, I had signed up for a class called Online Music Marketing with Topspin. Now, in 2013, Beats Music bought Topspin. Then Apple bought Beats Music, and Topspin just seemingly went away.
Mhm.
And so it was like, man, I can't even take this class. And something just kind of clicked like, okay, the industry is changing so much faster than the curriculum is able to. And it was like, there's no point in paying 12, 16, $1,800 per course if the information is going to be outdated by the time I graduate and get this certificate saying, hey, I know this stuff. But what was great about Berkeley, especially online, was that even though we weren't on campus, we were making connections with people from all across the country who wanted to learn the same things. So you kind of get rid of, because at the time, this is after I completed my undergrad, so I was going for a master's in music business. So at the time, all of my friends are like either in grad school, they're entering law school, or they've got like their big boy jobs or whatever. And I'm still like, yeah, I'm gonna make it in the music business. And so going to school did kind of provide that outlet and say, okay, I'm not the only one who thinks like me. There's a group of like-minded people here. But then in addition to that, Berkeley does a great job of connecting you with people who are active in the industry, right? And for people who aren't in the industry, I guess the thought is like everyone is P Diddy light, right? But what you find is that there's an entire industry, meaning different types of businesses working together in music to really keep the wheels turning. And so you learn about booking agents and publicists. And specifically at that time, we were really dealing with the crossroads of technology and internet startup culture with music. And so you had a lot of direct to fan platforms popping up. Pledge Music had just started picking up speed. There was something called Noise Trade. I say all that to say we were connected with founders in those companies, and that was really cool. So you kind of the DIY artist era was just really picking up steam, and Berkeley put us on the front lines of that, even if the what we were actually learning in class wasn't really lining up with it. So nowadays, I don't know that I would recommend going to school for music business, or, but for you, it worked out really well and it was kind of like a springboard for you.
Yeah, I think what I got the most out of the school that I went to was access to really great equipment and a
Mm,
diverse range of equipment. So the great thing about the school that I went to, and probably the only thing that I will say positively about them, is that they had 7 different recording studios in the facility. Each studio had a different console, had different outboard gear, both digital and analog, and pretty much all the classic stuff that you would find in any commercial studio around the world. So it gave me the ability, if I applied myself and booked out studio time to work on my own to learn the equipment, it gave me the ability to be able to move to a town like Nashville and feel comfortable walking into any studio and figuring it out. And that was the biggest advantage, I would say. There definitely is an advantage of that networking and connecting, sort of thing. I think that might be more in the business side of school as it relates to a career in the music industry. Um, Only because the audio side of things, the recording industry is such a challenging, competitive place that hits you with so much adversity that there's not a ton of people that I went to school with that are still in the business.
mm,
And so I didn't get that same experience that I've heard of other people getting from like a music business college, where they have like career long relationships that they built with folks. And that could just be my experience, but
mm.
that was what I experienced. But the great thing was having access to the equipment and then taking advantage of that time. When class wasn't in session, we were allowed to book the studios. And so I would just live at the school for like 3 days at a time. There was a
Gotcha.
little shower in one of the buildings. I brought a change of clothes in my backpack. And
Mhm.
I'd have class from like 10 a.m. to like 6 p.m. And then from 6 p.m. to like 3 a.m. I'd be in switching around from one studio to the other, just plugging things in, working on tracks, finding people around town to bring in to record, and just getting experience.
Nice. So, one of our recent guests is Alyssa Ferratro, and she was Spotify's equal residency. She Yeah, she was a part of their equal residency. So she's based in LA now, and she gets to work out of Spotify Studios. But she talked a lot about her time at Berkeley, and she listed the same thing that you just said, right? Like, okay, I had access to all these studios, so I was able to work my butt off, learn all the gear, learn all the ins and outs of engineering, and have a huge knowledge base that allowed me to go into LA and feel like I belong there. The way you describe your experience is almost like how I hear people describing going to a trade school versus a liberal arts school, where, let's say if you're going to school to be a mechanic, you're learning skills that you can take and use. Now, with trade school, we talk about it like it's kind of like, okay, you've got a guaranteed career on the other side of this. But what you just spoke about was that the audio industry is really volatile. Can you speak to some of the challenges that you faced and that others face going into that field?
Yeah, definitely. So the biggest challenge was the misconception that there were jobs available. And I say that, laughing, and it seems crazy, but when I was in school, the whole pitch of going and getting a degree is you need a degree to get a job at a studio. And then when I got my degree, I called every studio in Nashville, and there weren't any jobs. And so there was the potential for internships, but the school that I went to didn't have a adequate internship program to cover the regulations in Tennessee. So I couldn't get an internship either, which was the greatest thing in the world because it forced me to work for myself. And it led me to have the career path that I had, which is, it's incredible. But that first big understanding that I got when I moved here was that there's not the traditional idea in most cases of just getting a job somewhere. So there's a couple paths. One is the idea of an internship where you're working for free, not doing much engineering work typically. Usually it's cleaning the studio, tearing stuff down, setting stuff up, maybe picking up lunch, doing that sort of thing. Just kind of paying your dues, as they say. That's not how I look at internships in my studio, but that's how the majority of the industry looks at internships. And then the hope is that you pay your dues, you work through, and then you are able to somehow make an impression on someone that you have capability with audio, and then maybe you get the ability to assist on a session or kind of work your way into some things. I would say that in my experience, that path has almost disappeared from things. It still exists in some ways, but most studios are looking at interns not as a long-term training platform, but just fill the slot for this semester until the next crew comes in for the next semester. And so the other idea is to maybe find a producer or an engineer that you can become an assistant for. Now, I think that that's a much more likely process, but still very challenging because it takes the right connections and the right expertise to be able to offer value to someone. But that can be a great path. And I think that more and more people are finding that the freelance way of doing things is really the new normal for a lot of folks. And there's a lot of opportunity, especially in a market like Nashville or a market like LA. There's a lot of people that are creating art. And if you can find the niche that you can serve and have a really specific skill set to serve them with, I think that people can find their way with that. And that was one thing that I learned because I initially went into the idea of trying to find a job or an internship or an assistant kind of position with the willingness to do anything and everything for anyone that would let me do it for them. And that's a great idea to have on the surface. But what I found is that there's thousands of other people that are saying the exact same thing. And now being a studio owner, I recognize how challenging it is to be able to figure out, well, who do we say yes to when they're all saying the same thing? Well, you find over time that there's a very small amount, maybe 5% of the people that have a very specific vision and a very specific skill set that could serve something of value to you. And so I was able to learn that through a unique experience of hanging out in a session where someone asked me to help out with a Pro Tools thing, and then one of the managers in the back of the room saw what I did and asked me if I could help edit a project for him, and it ended up being my first commercial credit that I had on a record. And I kind of took note of that, and then I started focusing my intention more on sharing people what my specialties were and how I could help them specifically, as opposed to, do you have any opportunities for me? But I wanted to come with some sense of offering value first. And that can be a really challenging thing to figure out when you're first getting started and you don't have a client list and you have limited experience. But I think that we all have certain specialties, something that is great. And even if it's not a technical skill set, it may be a personality trait or something that you're really good at, maybe organizing or time management, or thinking creatively about problem solving. And you can turn that, think we're creatives. That's why we're wanting to get into this business. So think creatively about how to be a solution for someone. And I think that can be a great way to start to kind of break in and, and find that opportunity and get past that adversity.
Absolutely. I know just being in the DIY era and maybe just me being me, I just like learning new things, right? But throughout my career, I've been a photographer, a graphic designer, a music producer. I do video editing, right? You do all these different things. And, I don't think I'm unique in that. I think most musicians are learning multiple skills that are really valuable. If somebody went to go get a graphic design job, right, or a user experience designer job, now they call them, right? You can make a decent amount of money, but I think so many musicians are so focused on the goal of being a musician that they don't realize they're picking up really valuable skills along the way. But then the other side of that is you pick up so many skills, and if you're like me, I was just trying to sell whatever skill I could to whoever would listen. So it's like, oh, you need a photo shoot? I got you. You need a album cover? Cool, I got you. And so you started off kind of doing freelance stuff, and it's morphed into what you're doing now. Being someone who has multiple skills, did you find it hard to focus on a specific specialty starting out? Or was it just, hey, I think this is what provides the most value. This is what I'll speak up about?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I tell people about this idea, I tell people it's important to find your niche and then diversify your value. And that was what I learned through this process. At first, I just tried to do anything that I could to be able to get someone to pay me to do something that had to do with audio for them, just to be able to figure out how to start a career. And that was cool at first and an important lesson because I learned a lot of different things along the way. But I found that just leaves you sort of waiting for the next gig as opposed to having a comfortable, or I shouldn't say comfortable, but exciting, fulfilling career that's going to be able to continue to grow. Because you can't grow if you don't know where you're headed. You're never going to get there. You're always zigzagging and trying to just find the next opportunity, and that doesn't allow you to make much long-term progress. At least it didn't for me. So I had those couple experiences where I got that gig editing, doing Pro Tools editing on a record by just sitting in on a session and being able to jump in a unique time to show my skills. And then I had another epiphany after that I looked at what are the things that I have the most experience with. And at that time, I had the most experience recording vocals. So I focused a lot on really perfecting like the art of capturing a vocal and producing a vocalist and getting them comfortable on a mic and focusing on microphone placement and microphone selection and all of the specific skill sets that go into capturing a really great vocal. And then so I began to start to get known for someone that if you needed to cut a really great vocal, go to that person. And then through that, I started meeting a lot of different vocalists. So if I had a songwriter that needed a demo vocal cut, now I had that resource to be able to do that. So I focused on one thing, but then I was able to diversify the value of what I could offer to people within that. Eventually, I was always interested in doing more than just recording vocals. I want to produce records but once I got the opportunities to do those things, like to work with a full band for the first time, I had some experience doing that in school, but that wasn't what I had the most experience doing. So I went and sought out someone that was really great at doing that, and I hired them to engineer the session, and I assisted them. So I took the budget that the artist was paying me and hired someone else to do it so I could learn, get experience, and have a really great product, as opposed to trying to halfway do something. And I wanted to focus on being able to learn and grow in that way. So once I started getting comfortable with a wider variety of those things, then I started looking at how the record shop could diversify what it did as opposed to just production. And I found that a lot of the mid-level artists that I was working with that might not have a whole label team around them to support all of their content creation and all their marketing efforts, they needed someone to sort of help them get their team of people together, and they were struggling negotiating deals with videographers or photographers, or setting up a shoot, or coming up with an idea of how to run promo on a release, that sort of thing. And so I started learning a lot more about those sides of the industry. But as opposed to trying to be someone that would go and physically do all of those things, I started seeking out people that were masters in those specific skill sets. And then what I did was offered to be a project manager for what they wanted to put together. So an artist comes to me, I'm producing their record. They want to make some video content during that process to promote it. So I bring in the videographer. We come up with an idea together. I oversee it. I'm the go-between between the artist to make that whole relationship comfortable. So if the artist has like adjustments, I can talk to the videographer from a technical standpoint about, what they want, and make everything flow well, and make sure that the artistic vision of the artist is being served, through the whole process. So that's where the record shop started to diversify a little bit. But I made sure that I wasn't trying to get into doing too many things at once, and really staying in my lane of producing records.
Absolutely. So, we were talking offline before we got started, and just listening to other interviews you've done. I feel like if someone were to squeeze you, what they would get out is storytelling. And I mean, I'm someone who, I'm to my right. I mean, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, I'm surrounded by comic books and 12-inch albums, right? So
Yes.
I've got liner notes and stories for days around me. So I enjoy a good story. I enjoy, a good setup, middle, conclusion, all of it. Can you speak to the importance of storytelling as an artist or as a musician?
Absolutely. So I think that we need to look at music, or at least I look at production as a sonic visual. So I'm imagining the music video as we're putting together the arrangement, as we're choosing instrumentation, as we're thinking about the if we're writing a song, we're thinking about the key that it's going to be in, or the voicings of the chords, and the type of textures that are going to be in there, to be able to create this experience that takes someone to that place. And I think that that's for me, from a sonic standpoint, that's where the storytelling comes in. From artists, if you want to connect with a great audience, we have to tell a great story that's going to be universally compelling to a massive amount of people. And when you look at legendary artists, they have that storytelling capability, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in the most deepest singer-songwriter way. You can tell your story of partying in a fun and compelling way that connects with people based on the visuals that you're creating through your lyrics. And so I think from a creation standpoint, when we're writing songs, we look at the specific adjectives that we use to describe things, and maybe take something a little bit deeper lyrically, not deeper from a literary sense, but just deeper from the descriptive words that we're using to describe something that can help someone see what it is that you're doing. So you take them to that place, and they can go off in their imagination about what that experience is like as they're listening to the song, as a way to connect with the audience in a more intimate way. And beyond the creation of the music, I think that storytelling has continued to become even more and more important in marketing. I see so many artists that try to promote their music, especially new artists, by just creating it, putting it online, and then putting out a post on social media that says, "Go listen to my song." That's like walking up to someone in a bar that you've never met before and saying, "Hey, you want to get out of here?" before you've ever even had a conversation. That doesn't happen in real life, right? So why are we doing that? And social media, we want to tell our story. So when you're meeting someone for the first time, and you're starting that connection, if you're starting a relationship or a friendship, what are the questions that people ask? Like, where are you from? What do you do? You start telling them your personal story. So I think that from a promotional standpoint, the artists that are really successful in the digital space with marketing are the ones that are telling a compelling story, and that people want to go on that journey with them. So I focus a lot when we're in the production process of trying to capture that experience, and then coming up with creative ways for artists to tell stories about the songs that we're creating. So once they get out to the world, we have a compelling way to be able to share them with people.
Absolutely. And I 100% agree. One of the examples that I give in speaking about storytelling and marketing, is the Jordan brand. Right now, Nike and the Jordan brand, they've got all kinds of shoes, but each week they put out a different pair of retro Air Jordans. And up until about, I want to say 2014, every pair of Jordans that came out, it was just identified by its colorway. These are the black and red Jordan 4s. These are the blue and gray Jordan 5s, whatever. Sometime around 2014, and I guess for just to give some background, the Jordan brand operates in a sold out market, meaning before the shoe ever makes it to the stores, all of the pairs are accounted for. They know how many pairs are going to every store and they know they're going to sell out, right? It's not like you don't go to a mall and see a pair of Jordans sitting usually. So you got to buy it right then, Saturday morning, 10 a.m., and you got to get them. So Jordan brand was not having any problems selling sneakers, is my point. But in 2014, they stopped labeling their shoes with colorways and instead started giving every shoe a name. One of them was the 72 and 10. And, with the shoe release, they tell the story of the one season where the Bulls went 72 and 10, which was then a regular season record. Now, again, no one really needed a reason to buy Jordans, but behind the scenes, what the Jordan brand was doing was increasing their output. So instead of selling 200,000 pairs of a shoe, they were manufacturing 500,000 pairs of shoe, right? And with that, there was a need to give people an incentive to buy. And so they started telling these stories with each shoe, and each shoe became this, oh, I must have this. I need to be connected with this piece of history. And again, I mean, the reason I give that example is because if storytelling is important to the number one shoe brand in the world, that is like literally $1 billion ahead of the number two brand, then how much more important is it for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great example. And I think that the problem that some artists face with that thought process is that it starts feeling too much like business and not as much like music. And what we have to get over is the idea that it's the music business, and that if we want to be able to have the freedom and the fulfillment of being able to make art for a living, we got to make a living from the art that we're creating. Yeah. And so we need to start thinking about things in that way, but we can go about it in a very creative standpoint. It doesn't need to be a car salesman pitch to be able to get the music out there. We can tell our story in a creative way. And I think the other thing that with artists, we're very self-conscious. We're very internal. That's where we get our ideas and our inspiration from, and our release is the music that we create. And probably the biggest fear of artists is that we put music out and no one likes it. And we have to get over that too, and create music for the passion of creating it because it means something to us. And I think that once we start to understand that, we recognize that there's a ton of people out there that feel the same way or have a similar experience to what you have. And there's no lack of of need for someone to be able to connect. And so if coming up with a creative way to tell the story behind your song allows someone to connect in a deeper level with your music, then I think it's very much worth the effort and the thought process of going in and doing it. And it's not a cheesy sales tactic. It's just a way to be able to share your music in a deeper level and really get people to be able to be impacted by it.
Absolutely. I think people believe that putting effort into their sales means they have to be inauthentic. And in reality, some of the most compelling stories in music are just, hey, what inspired this song? I got a flat tire. I was on the highway. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it home. And I wrote a song about wanting to be home, right? Like that is cool. I mean, we take those types of things for granted because we're musicians and ideas seem to come like a mile a minute, right? But for someone who doesn't know how to create and, is looking at your music as an escape, they are eating it up that you have mundane experiences too. And now they feel like they're on a deeper level with you. So it's super important. So you've kind of made your mark by helping musicians to create content, not just in the form of music, but like you said, in other forms of media, whether it's social media content or just videos, all sorts of other things, storytelling like we've been talking about. And we're in the social media age, and I think it's content in general is just more important than it ever has been. How do you, as an artist, not get burnt out by having to create so many things all the time?
I think about why I'm doing what I'm doing and what my goals are. And I tell myself that every morning before I start my morning ritual to prepare for the day. And I tell myself that every night before I get done working.
Mm.
I have a mission statement for myself and for my company to help artists achieve their artistic vision and create art that will outlast us. And whenever I'm in a challenging spot where I'm feeling like, man, I just don't want to do this, I'm not feeling inspired, this mix is good enough, I say that to myself. And I've made that a habit. This isn't something that I'm some like magic super person or whatever.
Yeah.
But over time, we're always improving. But I started to learn to immediately go to that place when I hit that roadblock, to be able to get myself, my mind centered back in what my focus is and what fulfills me the most in life. And then there's no question. You just continue forward and you make it happen. I don't think it's a matter of having the willpower to do it, because we're always going to run out of willpower. But if we can put ourselves in an inspired state through different practices and be able to find a way to flip that switch and start to put our subconscious mind in a place where it's going to be positively reactive to adversity as opposed to reactive in a fight or flight sort of way, but rather like in a solution, way. I think that for me, that's been my experience, to be able to just get past those hurdles.
Got you. And so I'm sure there's an artist out there thinking, okay, well, that's easy for you to say because you're executing other people's visions in a lot of the case. What advice do you have for a musician who basically has to now be a content studio of his own? Are there things that you do to get around like mental barriers or blocks, or are there exercises that you do to kind of stay creative and keep coming up with fresh ideas?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that is true, that it can appear that way, of the difference between like the artist position and the producer's position.
Mm.
But where the artist is has to answer to the fans or find the connection with the fans, I have to find a connection with the artist. And then if the artist doesn't find a connection with the fans, then the artist goes somewhere else.
Right.
So my job is equally weighed on that level of connection. It's just a step away from the other side. So I work on this all the time with myself and with the artists that I work with in being able to be more inspired on a more consistent basis. I think that the what I mentioned before, just finding what that purpose is and that deeper level of purpose behind what you're doing. I saw the impact that music had on my life from a young age. It's been the soundtrack to so many different experiences that I've had. Hearing a song brings back these like crazy memories. And I want to be able to leave this earth having created music that will live on and be able to give people those same sort of experiences. And that pushes me to want to work harder. That puts me in a more creative space, because when I think about what that impact of that music will have, then it makes me more inspired to want to continue to create it, as opposed to being just focused on like awards or money, or fame, or recognition. All of those things burn out very quickly once you get them. You need to find something that will survive, far beyond that. So, determining what that is. Now, that's also very easy to say until you get in that place, which I still get in all the time. I think every creative person does, no matter what level in the industry you are, where you just feel like stuck. You're like, you're doing things that your yourself 10 years ago would have never imagined, or could only dream of being able to do. But now you still feel like, man, I feel like I'm just not getting anywhere. I feel like my career's over, and that's a challenging place to be able to push past consistently, because you can definitely get in those funks. The biggest thing that has helped me is coming up with a morning ritual that puts my mindset in the right place every day. And that I started that a few years ago, and it's really helped me be able to maintain that and not have to run into that issue as often. And I can go back to that, and it focuses a lot on my purpose, my goals, gratitude, but also exercise, meditation, and education. So I read every morning. I work out every morning, and then I read, and then I meditate. Then I read my goals, and then I start my day. And it just puts me in a much more, inspired state. Now, even with all that, when I hit that adversity, there's a couple things that I do. One is that I have a list of things that make me happy, like that I can go and do, or a place that I can go to that's inspiring to be at. And sometimes, especially right now, I can't go out to all of those places. So I just sort of have to imagine it and just be a creative. Put yourself in that place, that happy place. If you've ever seen Happy Gilmore, take yourself to that place that brings you some joy, and just try to find the positivity within it. Another really great exercise that one of my business partners, Ricky Mendez, he's a really great speaker and an implementational coach. He helps people transform their mindset and their business and their careers. And he came up with this concept of taking something negative and turning it into a positive thing. Now, that's not a concept, I guess, but he came up with a way of turning that into a statement. So as an example, he travels a lot. This is the example that he always gives. He travels a lot. He's on planes, or used to be on planes all the time. And the one thing that would drive him nuts is he's taken like the red-eye flight from one country to another, and he lays down to finally go to sleep, puts his head back, and some baby just starts wailing and crying. And it would drive him nuts for years. And then he got to this place where he was trying to really switch his perception about things. And he started to say to himself, I'm grateful for the crying baby on the plane because it reminds me that I have hearing. And when you start to look at adversity with gratitude and flip it upside down, I think that can put you in a really great place as well. So when something goes wrong in a session that I'm in, or if a deal falls through, or if something's not moving the way that I want, I look at a way to find gratitude within it. And people could say, yeah, it's a little crazy and like hocus pocusy or whatever, and nobody's that positive. And yeah, I mean, that it can be a challenging thing to get in that place, but what's the alternative? Just be like sad and upset about it. So I choose to take a positive outlook towards those things. And you can really take any situation and find positivity within it. And what that can do is just give you this drive and passion to move forward. I think what it just comes down to is how bad do you want it? I think that's another thing that you can just look at when you're in that position. You can remember that there's someone else out there right now that's going to continue past the same adversity that you're facing. That we all run into the same stuff. No matter what level you're at in the industry, you're always kind of growing and maturing to that next stage, and there's always someone above you, so there's always something to work towards. And the people that are able to push through it consistently because they want it more than anybody else, and they really believe that is what is going to truly fulfill them, is the creation of the art, not the recognition, the awards, the money, but the experience of actually doing it. And so when we can focus on that, I think it puts you in a really great place. The culmination of all those ideas is eloquently told in a book by Jason Reynolds called For Everyone. And I've been like a preacher for that book since it was introduced to me by one of the artists that I work with. And he just takes that whole idea of the artistic journey, or the journey of an artist that's trying to find that point where they feel like they've made it. And he recognizes through this self-discovery that you never really make it. You're just always on that path. And has a very poetic way of describing all of the emotions and feelings that a creative person goes through in that process. And the crazy thing about it, the book was written as a children's book, which is pretty wild, but it has such a great, for me, it was like I would say probably the most inspiring thing that I've read that related to the adversity that we face as creatives. And I recommend that for anybody that's in that place where they're just feeling stuck. It gives you some understanding that other people are there too, and it gives you a fresh perspective to understand that there's beauty in being stuck. There's beauty in that journey because it means that you have something to work towards and you can continue to grow. And every experience that we have is something that can be really cool to look back on. As you continue to grow, you can look back at where you came from and see this, the growth that's happening. And it can become, that adversity can become a very positive thing with the right perspective. when we look at it a little different.
Got you. And so that book was For Everyone by Jason Reynolds, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to check.
And it's like $5 on Amazon. It's like it's no brainer. Everyone should own it.
All right. Well, I'll put a link to it in the show notes and in the YouTube description if you're watching on YouTube. So obviously, I mean, you're in a commercial recording studio or multimedia facility, and seemingly the lifeblood of a facility like yours is having clients coming in and out. How has your business changed because of the whole pandemic situation?
I've got so many cool ideas out of this happening. At first when this whole shift happened, or when we got the idea that things were going to be shut down for a little while, I was for a moment just like kind of relieved. Like, man, I'm going to have a little bit of extra time. I can dive into some things. And for like the first week, I got a subscription to Masterclass, and I watched a few different things. There was I learned like magic from Penn and Teller, and just like some stuff that was just, totally just, let's just do something different and just kind of just get a little break and kind of refresh, But as anyone that's a creative can understand, that only lasts for so long. Yeah. So it was about 10 days in, and I was, that's when my wheels started turning on really like, how are we going to pivot and create new ways to be able to provide resources for the artists that we work with. So a couple of the things that I started doing at first, we do mobile recording. So we go on location to festivals and concerts and showcases, and we can capture audio on location at different places. And obviously there's no shows happening now, so that equipment is just sitting in our storage area. So I had a few artists that were in the middle of working on projects and they wanted to keep recording, and they just had vocals to finish. And so some people have a studio or set up at home where they can record. But in many cases, the artists that we're working with may not have the same level of equipment that we have. And so for us to be able to finish a record, they really need to have access to that sort of stuff. And they oftentimes want someone to be able to run the software for them. So I put together a little system with a really high-end audio interface with some great converters. And then whatever microphone that specific artist used, I would put it in the package. And then I could drop it off to their house. They could set it up, and a computer with it as well. They could set it up, and then I could remotely control the computer. And they'd have all the equipment. I'd have it just all plugged in and have a little set of instructions for how they turn it on and, and get the level set. And then I can remotely control everything else while they're recording. So that was a great way for us to be able to keep projects going that were already happening. And then we dove into to just remote sessions, spending a lot of time on Zoom and figuring out some creative software. There's a plugin that's called Audio Movers that allows you to put the plugin in your DAW and then stream the audio directly from your DAW. So I was able to do mix revisions that way. We were able to do remote overdubs that way, where it wasn't just kind of like coming halfway through the Zoom, speaker. We could hear it right out of the studio speakers, just like it was, it was here. Very little latency. So yeah, we started diving into to software like that. And then the live streaming situation. So everybody is going live now, artists, businesses. And so I immediately went into planning mode on how we could expand upon the capabilities that we had for a really high level live stream. Up until now, we were just kind of using a makeshift kind of setup of a couple cameras and some internal software to make it happen. And we were just experimenting with the idea. And before COVID, it wasn't as common for like every artist to want to be streaming on a consistent basis. So it really wasn't a business model that had grown to fruition just yet. But as soon as I saw this shift start to happen, I dove right into figuring out how we could set up a really great system. And so now we're offering broadcast quality live streams from the studio for artists and for businesses. We're doing them for churches. We did a corporate presentation where we're doing like album release parties. And we have a multi-camera setup that is mobile, so we can take it anywhere, but we can have it set up in the studio with our own client to stream from, and with studio quality audio, and then be able to capture all of that content to repurpose it later on. So I think that's probably the biggest shift that came out of this. But what I did find is that with a little bit of extra time on my hands in between, sessions and Zoom meetings, I started just getting all these like crazy ideas about different types of content I could create with different artists for different projects, song ideas, new creative ways. I was experimenting with just, taking more time to just mess around with things. Like when I was, when you first get started out and you're just exploring things, as opposed to just kind of working through session by session. And so I made a commitment to myself that I was going to do a couple things when this happened. The first thing was that I wasn't going to change my morning ritual. Even though I might not have a session at 10 a.m. every morning anymore, I was still going to get up at the same time, and I was still going to remain committed to that. And I can honestly say that I did that for a period of time, and then it became a little bit of challenging, and then I pushed myself back out of it. But there was a time in the middle where I just broke down and was like, screw it, man, this isn't ending. And, you get a little overwhelmed. But I was able to take what I've learned in the past and the strong habits that I built and push past it and get back to normal with it. The other thing was that regardless of whether I had someone in the studio or not, I was going to get up and not only do my morning ritual, but then put on proper clothes like I would if I was in a studio with someone, and make sure that I was keeping myself in that same condition that I would be if there were people here. And I think that that's done quite a lot for my psychological balance while I've been basically sitting here like staring at a Zoom screen for a couple months, working with artists. And that really helped, I think, just keep me focused and be able to think creatively about how we can dive into, to some new things. And so through that, now we have some new partners, we have some new services that we're offering, and a new way to be able to support artists at a high level, and be able to help them continue to keep their businesses rolling while all this craziness happens.
Got you. So you said a lot there. I do want to point out, just not to gloss over, Audio Movers is a godsend. So if you are a recording engineer or anyone really listening to this, check it out. I actually use Audio Movers every week to run the live stream for my church. So I'm sitting in this room. I'm using a combination of Audio Movers and a remote desktop tool to control the live stream computer at my church. And so that way we're broadcasting the signal to YouTube, but I can monitor the levels from home with my home studio monitors. And it's really good.
That's awesome.
Because with a lot of like remote desktop software, it's like you get this really flat sound, but with Audio Movers, it's really high fidelity, like you said. So it's been great. Now, you also talked about just how many more musicians are kind of opening up to the idea of live streaming. What are some of the challenges you've seen them facing with live streaming? Is there a certain way you recommend going about it if you're just jumping in?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is getting over yourself and doing it for the artists that aren't already established and weren't doing it before. I think a lot of artists, they feel a couple ways. They may not have that audience living on those places already. Like maybe they're just touring and they have that sort of thing, but they're not necessarily engaged with being able to jump on live at any time and be able to get a decent amount of people to watch. So some people will do it like once or twice and they got 10 or 12 people. It's basically like their family that's watching them, and they're like, "Hi, Mom," playing a song. And then they get bummed out and they're like, well, I guess this isn't really for me. Or try to find an excuse not to do it. And maybe it's not for every artist, but there's definitely other creative ways that you can get on there and do stuff, even if it's not a performance. Telling your stories, getting in and talking about your creative process, and just engaging, with people. And I think the consistency is really important. So the greatest example that I have is an artist that I work with named Cassie Joy. Cassie's an incredible country artist. She was a contestant on The Voice, did really well on the show, built a bit of a fan base off of that, but then she dove right into an independent career as an artist and has been thriving with it. Up until COVID, for about a year before this happened, she had been live streaming every Wednesday for at least a year, if not a year and a half, and every single Wednesday. And through doing that, she built a really great following already before this happened. The other thing that she was doing was she did something called Music Mondays, where she asked one of her fans to request a song, and then she records a I guess, like demo of it, and then shoots a music video for a cover song every Monday. And so in doing that, she has this consistency and this little kind of like cool thing that she does with the content. So she did that for a year, maybe a year and a half before this happened. So what happened when all of this happened and everybody's sitting on social media, she already had her fan base. Now that fan base just exploded. And for an independent artist, with having 30,000 people watch her live stream is pretty insane.
Wow.
And she's just been killing it. But she did that through consistency and through a very focused, intentional focus on connecting with people in a creative way. The other thing that's creative about her live stream is her awesome husband Brian. They're a dynamic duo. He helps her with the business. That's all that they do together. And he's on the live stream, and they have like a little banter back and forth, and he'll answer the comments. And so they got this like unique thing, and it's a fun, intimate experience to be able to hang out with her, hear her music, and then they kind of go back and forth, and he shouts out the people that are commenting. So having a sidekick on the show could be an interesting thing, Yeah. Another thing that I've seen artists do is come up with a theme. So maybe they're doing cover songs from a specific era of time. That could be like a cool thing to do. And then maybe you dress up like that, and you put on this cool experience. I've seen other artists that would do something with, like, instead of just setting the camera up, they have like a moving camera like through the room. And this has been happening more often, where you can have like a couple people together spread out in a room. But having like a 4-song set where you're playing and there's like a drummer, singer, maybe keyboard player or something, and the camera's just kind of like shifting throughout it, and it looks pretty cool, and it's a more like engaging experience. That can be a great way. Stage It is doing some cool things with ticketed shows. So for the artists that are a little uncomfortable with like asking for tips to make money, you can do a Stage It show, sell tickets for it, and they have a fun way to sort of gamify like the live concert experience and that kind of thing. So I think just getting creative, and the biggest thing for artists that haven't been doing it yet is just get over yourself and jump on there and just start playing your music. And you probably played your first show to like 3 people at a bar or like coffee house somewhere. So you can do that on online and just let it grow. I think the important thing is consistency and and getting out there and just trying to find ways to be unique.
Got you. So for a lot of artists who are going to be, starting out on this live streaming journey, we're going to be using our phones, right? Because it's so easy to hit the go live button, and there you go. You've got like a little mobile studio there. But one of the downsides of that is the audio generally is not that good. Do you have any recommendations to overcome that part of it?
Yeah, definitely. So when this first happened, we opened up our studio to single artists to come in and do live streams by themselves. And I would set everything up in the room and set up lighting and be able to control like a computer remotely. But most of them would bring in like their iPad or their phone and plug it into a device that a company that we work with called DPA Microphones provided us. And the device is actually called Device. It has 2 inputs for microphones, and then it has a Thunderbolt connection. The device is about this big. If you're not watching on YouTube, it's a couple like $50. And you can connect 2 mics to it, and then you connect the other end to your phone, your computer, your iPad. And it has a little application that allows you to set the levels, and then it'll link right up with whatever your audio stream would be. So whether it's YouTube or Facebook or IG, and that now you have like studio quality audio with a couple mics. It doesn't take a lot of equipment. The one potential downside is that the whole system with their microphones can be a little bit expensive. So that's maybe a mid-level option for that, but a really great option. And I would say for someone that doesn't have that sort of budget, there's plenty of other, I'm not sure what they call those, but like audio devices that work with phones. And just invest in something like that. There's some that are like $50 that will at least give you a better quality, and you can plug in a mic to it and be able to run it that way. If maybe you'd prefer to use your phone, because it's easier. But if you're an artist and you already got your little home studio, just run it through your computer and the audio through your interface, and use a mic to be able to get a little bit of a higher quality audio stream. It'll definitely make a huge difference. I think another thing is important is environment. So if we're stuck at home, I mean, I saw one artist that did something really cool. He was just like live from my closet, and he just went in his like messy closet with stuff all over. It was awesome. So you don't even have to have like some crazy props and turn it into to something, but take some effort to maybe make a little theme out of it, or do something with it. I had another artist that I work with who's a country artist, and she took a bunch of like old records and magazines of like old classic country artists, and she pasted them up on the wall in a little like 6x6 like square, and that's what she's been performing in front of, and it looks really cool. The other thing, invest in just a little bit of lighting. You can get a ring light on Amazon for $30 or something, and put that up to be able to get a nice solid clear image of you coming through. And those little things will just take you from halfway doing the the home live stream thing to something that looks a bit more professional and stands out as someone is scrolling through their feed. Because people may say, well, people don't really care about the the quality. They just want to watch something real quick. But tell me what you would stop and look at if you're scrolling through your feed real quick and you see a bunch of these grainy videos, then all of a sudden you see something that looks pretty cool. It's got a nice backdrop. The lighting looks nice. The artist looks cool. It looks like they're having a good time. And you stop and listen for a minute. I think that's probably the one that most people are going to land on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take too much money or effort to be able to really step up the game when it comes to that type of thing.
Agreed. Now, one thing that I've been thinking about since we're in quarantine or shut down, whatever. I'm in this room. This is my backdrop, and it's been my backdrop for 4 months now. How do we get over that feeling stale, or is it as simple as, okay, just try going outside, try doing this? Because a lot of musicians, especially with it being the Instagram generation, a lot of people are finding success by having little mini photo shoots with their friends outside, doing things like that to keep their feed looking a certain way. But again, we're stuck at home. We're stuck with the same 2 or 3 locations in the house. How do you keep it interesting?
Yeah, well, I just had an idea when you said that. So we can't go anywhere, right? But
Right.
wouldn't it be funny to like, depending upon the type of artist that you are, take a picture and then like really badly Photoshop it in front of somewhere that you wish that you were at, and like make that like a weekly post of like, wish you were here, sort of thing. That could be really cool. Anybody is welcome to go and take that and run with it. But as you were saying that, I was like, well, how could we get a different backdrop? Well, you could throw something like that up. And then that way, it's not like you're like, you're faking. It's obvious that you're trying to kind of like poke fun at, we can't go anywhere. And, but this is where I would love to be. Who else would love to be here? Start a conversation. What's your favorite place that if you could be anywhere right now, where would you go? So I think just thinking creatively, right? I mean, like that's what we do when we're writing songs and we're making music.
Yeah.
So if we want people to hear our music, we got to figure out how to get ourselves in front of people. And so just come up with some creative ideas to, do something, a little bit different. There was something that I did, for the past couple months now. Every week I've been giving away something that brings me joy, for no other purpose than doing that. I just jump on social media and make a little video and say, hey, this week, I'm going to give away this book. I'm going to give away this game. The other week I ran out of ideas, so I just gave away money. And, but whatever it was, I was just like, this is stuff that brings me happiness, and I want to try to spread some joy with some other people. And I didn't have any like ask. I wasn't trying to, I didn't say follow me to sign up.
Right.
I did things like, I took a picture of myself in the trail around the lake that I run, every morning, and said, this place really brings me a lot of peace of mind in the mornings before I start my day. Comment with a picture, that brings you peace. And I'm going to pick a name out of, I wear hats all the time. So I'm going to pick a name out of my hat at the end of the week, and somebody will win this book that I like. And people, really responded to it, and it started some great, conversations. But a really great thing that I learned from that is that, we all get stuck on the idea of the initial interaction of like how many likes and comments do we get, but we don't think about how many people are actually seeing that stuff that just don't stop to do it, but it still sticks in their head. So I would get on the phone with somebody and the first thing they would say is like, man, those giveaways that you're doing every week are so cool. But I know damn well that they didn't comment on that thing because I didn't have their name in the hat. And I was like, well, if they're so cool, why didn't you participate? But it reminded me that it's really the consistency and the action of doing something on a regular basis, not the immediate response that we get that's going to give you long-term success.
Yeah, that is a very good point. So I know we're running low on time, but I did want to ask you about Mind Map.
Oh yeah.
What is it and how is it helpful to artists?
Mind Map is a program that's designed to help artists find a balance between the intersection of art and business, which I think is one of the most challenging things for us as artists to discover. I was kind of forced into finding that balance at a very early stage in my career. Out of necessity, if I wanted to make a living, I was going to have to figure out a way to work for myself because of all the things we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. And through all the things that I've learned through that period of time, I felt like I was in a position where I could give some pretty strong advice and put a little bit of a system into it to start to help artists create a foundation for how they can find a way to make business a fun and creative side of what they do. I also wanted to be able to help artists that are maybe already pretty far along in their career, but need to recenter their focus on the reason behind why they do things and how finding inspiration on a regular basis and staying more consistent. So it's a bit of a combination of fundamental like business development and creative mindset coaching.
Gotcha.
And my buddy Ricky Mendez, who I mentioned earlier, designed the program with me. We took the best of both of our minds, my experience in the music business, his experience helping very successful corporations become more successful, and helping improve people's mindsets and have a better quality of life and live more inspired and fulfilled. And we took what we both knew and combined it into this idea where every corporation has these like retreats that they send people on to improve their mindset or their team building. Or help them with their sales or that sort of thing. But there's nothing really out there for artists. There's how to get more followers on Instagram. There's how to get more plays on Spotify. There's how to mix that kick drum better and make your 808s rock harder. But there's not like how to get people to pay you to do those things, how to build a long-term, a deeper connection with your fan base, how to have enough inspiration to take the initiative to continue to do those things on a regular basis so they can become successful. And so that was really what inspired that. I've seen so many really talented artists that had every piece of the puzzle together except for the ability to just get past the adversity of figuring out that side of the business. And in the modern recording industry, if you're getting started with your career, if you're trying to break into the next level of your career, there is absolutely a bit of business that you're going to have to sort of figure out and navigate in order to be able to get to that place where you have other people doing that business for you. And so that was the purpose of why we created it. I felt like it would be a strong solution for people, and I felt like I was really spending a lot of time helping artists work through all of these things. And so I just took all of the experiences that I had from supporting artists through that process, and not just artists, but other audio engineers, apprentices that I've had, videographers that I've worked with that are freelancers trying to get their career off the ground. It really applies to any sort of creative-minded person that is looking to find personal fulfillment and business success within their perspective field. Gotcha. So we created a course that's a combination of videos and worksheets. The complete course has 21 chapters to it. And it kind of takes you through the whole process of really defining what your mission is and what you're going after, then figuring out how to articulate that with people, how to get past the gatekeepers, how to build stronger relationships and a stronger team around you, and then how to maintain an inspired mindset through the process, how to manage your time better. Just really dive into all these fundamental things that will help you with all of those other aspects that is what is more commonly talked about. So the things that we don't teach you is the Instagram strategies and the Spotify strategies and all of those types of things. There's enough people already talking about that stuff. There's not a lot of people helping develop the fundamental principles that will allow you to be successful by following those other technical skill sets.
Right.
And that was the solution that we wanted to provide. Got you.
So the full course, or the full program that you said 21 different classes, can I purchase separate classes individually, or is it just kind of an all-in-one package?
It's all in one. Actually it's broken down into two.
Okay.
So you can either buy them separately or you can buy the two together.
Okay. Cool. And for people who would like to sign up for that or who are interested, how do they do it?
You go to mindmaptribe.com and then just sign up.
Okay. Perfect. So I think we're a little late for a lightning round. Well, we can make it lightning quick. All right, cool.
Yeah, I'm good.
What's your favorite song right now?
Holy moly. Oh, I'm not lightning fast enough. What is my favorite song right now? If I Ever Leave This World Alive by Flogging Molly.
Got you. Okay.
I was listening to that this morning when I was working out, and it made me laugh.
Nice. Who's your favorite artist?
Tupac.
Okay. What is one thing that you wish artists understood more about the music industry?
You never really make it.
Okay. And what's, on the flip side, one thing that you wish the industry understood more about its artists?
That there's no roadmap to guaranteed success.
Okay. So if you met a young Sean, right? Someone, it doesn't have to be you meeting yourself because that's weird, but someone who
cool,
wants to be like you, wants to accomplish some of the things that you have. What is one piece of advice that you would give that person?
Make sure that you have a meaning greater than yourself for what you're doing.
That's a good one. Well, that was it for the lightning round. Just one more time for anyone who is interested in keeping up with what you're doing or joining any of your programs, how do they stay in touch with you?
At the Record Shop Studios on Instagram, therecordshopnashville.com, and mindmaptribe.com. And something that I always say whenever I am in a position to talk with people is if you are looking for guidance, mentorship, just someone to ask a question to, need any help within what you're trying to pursue within your career, you can send me an email to therecordshop1@gmail.com, or you can go to my website and go to the contact page, and eventually the emails will be directed to me. Okay. And I respond to every single person that hits me up because I know how it feels to stare at an empty inbox when you're just trying to figure stuff out and find somebody to give you some direction. So if I can't help you, I'll put you in touch with maybe somebody that can. And if I can give you some advice or some direction, or if I can personally do something to help, I absolutely will. Because I know what it feels like to be there when you're trying to make it happen. And I want to be that support and pay it forward to honor the people that did it for me.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate that. And I know our listeners will too. So I will definitely leave all of your links in the description of this video, in the show notes if you're listening on iTunes. But Sean, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. It's a great conversation.
It was great.